And so in our train class, we are going to be looking at step 2. We're going to write a train.java that creates the linked list and offers methods to manage the linked list. It should have only one variable called front of type car. So basically, if we were to look back at our program, we would have our train, and it would be using this as our node class to be manipulating and changing everything. We're going to be implementing the following methods in here as well. So we can copy all of this over, and then we will paste this in our and then we'll paste this in the new train file that we'll make in a second. But if we keep reading, we also have some more hints. We need to read the given file car.txt and split the input into 3 tokens using the inline.split, and this is a string method. And we are using the inline.split because, well, we have our factory and we have our stop, and we also have the material all on the same line. And the same thing for this update one as well. So looking back here, that's how we would do it. And then we have some more information down here about how we need to actually sort this. So we can see that it is not in order by stop, but we do need it to be in order by stop. So we're gonna have to make a method for that as well. And although that's not given in here, we will have to make it. So it'll be an add-on. These are just some of the things that we should make. And then we have some sample output here, and we will be able, and after we actually do the code, hopefully it will look like this. So let's go back to the code, and we're going to need to go into our main package. We're going to make a new class, and this class name is going to be train, and we'll just click finish. And now we have our train class. Now, just to have the skeleton of it, we can highlight over this and paste. Actually, we want the actual train class that was not given to us, but we can paste all of this in and scoot this over here. Now we can see that we have our constructor here. This will read each train details from the file into the linked list. And this is actually pretty nice that we were given these commas, because what we can do is, when doing our Java documentation, just paste it inside of here. Now remember, in the instructions, it did say that we need one variable, and our only variable is going to get the front of type car. So from our car class, we want to get the front thing. And since we're only using this variable in here, we're going to make it a private car and then front. And it might also be good to make a default constructor. And in our default constructor, we're just going to have public train, and then in here, we're just going to set our front equal to null. And so this is just going to be this constructor right here. We can now move on to the actual constructor right here, where we have public train string car file, there's file not found exception. So we will parenthesize this, and the car file is what's being passed in. This is not important, again, because remember, these are methods that are going to be called in our main class when we eventually write that out. However, we will need to import our file not found exception. It's important that we don't just do import and then like a dot asterisk to import everything. That's bad practice, and you're importing more than you need. So back in this constructor, we are going to have our file, which is car file. We need a scanner to go through this line by line, because if we look at our notes or the text file, we're going to take this line, and then we're going to split the tokens and then add them into our list. We'll also need to sort our list in here, so we'll create a helper method just to keep everything easy. We have scanner, we will call it car scan. We're going to set this equal to a new scanner, and then inside of here we have a new file, and then we are going to open car.txt. And what we need to do is also import our scanner class, as well as import the file class. So hovering over both of them and clicking import will give them to us like that. We're going to run this as long as car scan dot has next, but we don't just want the next, we want the next line. So we're going to have that in there, and then we're going to be inside of our while loop. Inside of our while loop, we're going to want to make a array that stores the tokens. So what we can do is say that we need a string array because our tokens are strings. We'll call this tokens, and we're going to set it equal to a car scan dot next line because we're getting the line, and then we need to split it, so we'll do dot split, and then what we want to be splitting it with is this comma, and that's because we have the comma that separates these values. So going back here, we can then end this line. Currently our array is storing the values, but it's not storing them correctly. What we're going to need to do is change the actual next line that we scanned in to be at different indexes. So when we look at the file, we want the name at the 0th index, the number at the 1st index, and then the value or whatever it's carrying at the 3rd index. And if we do this, we can, or 2nd index, sorry, this should be at the 2nd index, 0, 1, and 2. And then after we do this, we can add it to our linked list, which is basically our cars. So inside of here, we're going to have int, and we'll do a is equal to 0, and we'll be inside of a for loop, and we'll actually be doing a for each loop to make this easier. So we will have string, and we'll have some arbitrary number. We'll call this b, and then we're going to have a colon, and then we need our array name, which is tokens. And for each loop, if you don't know how it works, basically we have this string right here, and we have our array, and so this is going to go through every string in our array every time this for loop runs, so it just keeps it nice and simple. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have tokens, and we need to increment this index every single time. So we're going to have a inside of here, and then obviously after this we would need to do a plus plus every time we run this, but we're going to set this equal to the string that we're currently looking at, which is going to be our b. And then after we break out of this for loop, we can add this part to our front of the cars, and then we'll obviously sort it. So we're going to add everything to our train, and then we're going to move the separate cars around to sort it. So inside of here, we are going to need to have our add front method. So inside of here, I think it'd be easiest if we just make another helper method, and this helper method would be add front. And so we will have add front, and this is again just adding it to the list. We will then sort it afterwards. So we will have the array, which is tokens. We're going to have our 0th index, so we know we get the factory name, and then we want to get the next thing. Currently it's stored as a string, so we need to convert it to an integer. An easy way to do this would just be integer dot parseInt, and we can look at the description of what it is right here. Basically, it takes a string as an argument and parses it for an integer. So we have parseInt, and then what we want to pass in is not car file, but instead tokens at index 1, and then lastly we are going to have tokens at index 2, and then we can just come out of here, and this is it. We will add this by hovering over and click create method. We want it to be private. That looks good because we're only using it in here. We are going to have void add front, our strings, our int, and then the string 2.